morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Life Nutrition Radio and podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com. Today we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to talk about some genetics and some epigenetics and some GI testing and how we put it all together. So, but first, as always, we start the show with gratitude because gratitude can change the world. I have so many things to be grateful for today. Super excited that I get to drive. It's middle of November and it's beautiful and sunny and I can drive with the top down on my car. So that's amazing. I love this. It makes me so happy. I'm also grateful for family, grateful for good friends. I've been able to take a little bit of time off to go and spend time with family and friends in Dallas on the lake house. We got to spend some time meeting some new friends at a women's conference that I went to. Also found out about she was a friend, but not a close friend. But we graduated high school together. And over the weekend, she lost her life to cancer that she'd been struggling with for I think it's been 5 years. So it makes you obviously super just sad for the family, but you know, the gratitude in all of this is she's a believer, and she's out of pain now, and she is good and happy and healthy, and you know, it's just, time here is so short. You know, I'm 53, she was 53. It's amazing how quick it can go. And so my thoughts and my prayers are with their family. I'm grateful that she is out of that struggle, but I know family now still has to continue with that struggle. So anyway, I'm grateful for just having really great people around me in all that I'm doing and are super supportive. And you know, it's a beautiful life. Let's enjoy it while we're here, and then enjoy what's next, right? So, okay. So today, what I wanted to do, or what I've been doing, you know, I think a lot about how I can do better. And when I'm working with clients, you know, and it's always been this way, that everything that I do is based on that person's needs, which is why I love testing, right? And so when we're looking at doing our best for clients, it's layering in data points. And so for me, as I work through the process of understanding, you know, the symptomatology of a client, what the goals and the needs are, what the history is, we take all of that and we put it in. And so I was thinking about this and have a client that I've been working with who, her goal early on was hormones, and thought, you know, and her hormones were a little bit out of whack and she was having a tough time, you know, with perimenopausal, and there's all of these things that go along with that. She decided that was enough, so was doing really well with that, right? And decided, okay, there's these GI issues that just keep coming up, right? Why do they keep coming up? It's been years and years and years since childhood. Her family also has struggled with some GI issues. So you're like, okay, what is this that's happening, and what is it that we can do about it? And how do we put all of these things together to guide someone to where the hormones are balanced, the GI is balanced, the life is as optimal as possible, right? Things are going to change. The body's super dynamic. But how do we take all of these things and put them into where we can then ensure, right? But do our best to build out protocols, systems, lifestyle modifications that help each person get to where they want to be. And so, as I was thinking through that, you know, the things that we want to really understand that is, I think, so important, is that the body is so dynamic. It's multidimensional, and the symptoms are really just the body talking to us, right? It's the body is communicating with us. And so if we, and this is probably the biggest thing that I will probably say every time I'm on a show or every time I'm talking with someone, is that if we can just understand and know that the body's not fighting us, and that we're not fighting the body, and that the goal is to work in partnership, things get a lot easier, right? And this is the thing that I hear so often, is that my body is fighting me. Why does my body hate me? Why does food hate me? All of these things. And so we just got to understand the why behind it. And so, you know, what we want to do is dig in as deep as we can. And not everybody wants to do genetic testing, and not everybody can do functional testing. And the functional testing is key, right? So we have conventional labs. Conventional labs are great, and there are lots of things we can do with them. And I run a good comprehensive metabolic panel and a CBC on pretty much everybody, or I have them bring it in if they've already done it. Usually it's not as comprehensive as I want it to be, but that's okay. We can get as much out of it as possible. But you know, we talked about this before, that lab ranges in conventional lab ranges versus functional lab ranges are different. So we want to look at these, and we want to look at the optimal levels of these lab values, as opposed to just these general ranges, which is really, it's more pathogenic. Whereas what we're looking at in the functional world is, what are these red flags? Because more red flags do come up, but then we start being able to put more and more pieces of the puzzle together, right? I don't want to be the general population. I want to be my best. I want to be as optimal as I can possibly be, right? And so we want to understand that the symptoms and the lab values are how we start to determine what is it that we need to do next and what's going on in order to manage symptoms. And I keep saying manage symptoms. It's not managing symptoms. It's really getting rid of symptoms, at least to the best that we can, right? But sometimes we got to manage first, and then we got to keep moving beyond that, right? And so, if we're looking at the red flags, but we're not looking at them in context, meaning if we're looking at the labs without the symptoms, or the symptoms without the labs, then you know we're just sitting here kind of guessing. So this is why, you know, I say this, and pretty much everybody in functional medicine, functional nutrition says this: we test, we don't guess, right? And so if it's at all possible, we want to test as much as possible, because it just gives us so much great information. So fun. So what we can do, and what we did with this client specifically, is we look at genetics, which is how the body is wired, right, or what it's wired for. And we did microbiome testing. So my favorite panel to date is the Gut Zoomer by Vibrant America. Such a great panel. If you want to understand your gut, this is a solid place to start, because it looks at inflammatory markers. It looks at your microbiome. So what are your commensal bugs? What are your good, healthy, happy bugs, right? What are your opportunistic bugs, which are good, healthy, happy bugs in moderation, right? If we don't have enough of the good, diverse, healthy bacteria, then these opportunistics, which are commensal, but then they become opportunistic because there's no guard, right? There's no manager of them, and so they're like, okay, we can get out of control, and we got all kinds of stuff that we like havoc we can wreak on the body when there's too many of us. And so then we can look at blood work, of course. Oh wait, let me finish that. So back to the Gut Zoomer. So we look at commensals, opportunistic, and then truly pathogenic. And so the parasites and certain gram-negative bacteria and worms and all of these things that can come up that we can be struggling with. And what I try to do too is I try to test on a full moon. So crazy as it is, but it's amazing. But you know, nature, animals, they move around more around a full moon. So same with bacteria and parasites and worms and that kind of thing. During a full moon, they're going to be more active. So we have more potential for seeing what's going on. Worms are really hard to find, period. It's just the way that it is. And you know, I tested myself. Worms never came up. I did a cleanse. Guess what happened? So you know, it's part of it, and we don't want those guys in there. Although it's a whole different world to think that there are some worms that might actually be beneficial. I think that we're probably a little bit on the fence with that one, but I think what is important to understand is we live in a world that's full of bacteria and worms and parasites and viruses and molds and all of these things. And what we need to really understand and keep in mind is that all of these things our body has the ability to manage. Our body has the ability either to fight it, to mitigate it, to deal with it, if we have a good, healthy, robust microbiome. And that's really the key right there, right? And so if we're not eating the right fibers or enough fiber, if we're not getting the phytonutrients that, all of these different foods that feed the organisms that live in our gut and live in our mouth and live in, the vagina and the skin and everywhere, right? There are these little microbiomes all over the body. If we're not supporting those, then the body can't mitigate, manage, deal with some of these things, right? And so that's really what it's all about. We have microbes that help us to detoxify metals, heavy metals. We have microbes that help us to detoxify toxins in the environment, right? So that's what it's for. The microbiome is 70% of our immune system. And so that has to be the number one thing that we're doing. It will help with mental and emotional health. It's I've gone maybe full circle where there's the view that the brain comes first and the gut follows. There's the view that the gut comes first and the brain follows, right? They're so connected. How can you say one over the other? But more than anything, I think everything that is in the gut has an impact on every other system, organ, function in the body, right? It's the microbiome that talks to the brain. It's the microbiome that goes through the vagus nerve that talks to the brain. The brain also talks to the gut, right? They are, simpatico. They're, sort of one and the same, really. But we have to have good, healthy, robust, diverse organisms and feed those organisms what they need in order to create health. Probably have beat that drum enough, but that's been a focus of mine probably over the last 6 months, is super diversifying the fibers that I'm taking in the different foods, fiber supplements, just to see what I can build and how I can continue to build these bugs that are supportive and healthy. And so then we also have, so we've talked about genetics, microbiome, blood work. Blood work shows what is currently going on, right? And then symptom patterns. And so then we can take all of these and put them together. And so there are other labs. There are, things that I love to run are like a total tox panel. Let's understand the toxins that you're struggling with, so we know how to get rid of those things. But this is, specifically what we did with this one particular client. And so what I love here is precision builds confidence, and it's so true, right? If we can be precise with understanding what the symptoms are coming from and why, and understand what the body's trying to tell us, then we can be more precise in building protocols and understanding what we need to do to manage whatever's going on and help that patient or that client to reach their goals, okay? Excuse me. And so when we do start layering in, we can take out a lot of the confusion, right? And so we have this particular client who is quite healthy, right? Especially outside looking in, and there are a lot of people who outside looking in, look healthy and have a lot going on. I've seen many of those, but she's active. She is perimenopausal, having a few struggles, but still doing well. She's an entrepreneur, and she's a mom, and she's doing all of the things, right? And so she first went to, it wasn't to me, but she first went to someone to help her with the hormones, which is awesome, right? That's great. That's a great way to start. But what I would say is in order to balance hormones, we still have to have a balanced microbiome. And so that's why we do these things, and we look, because there can be the microbiome that can impact hormonal health, but the genetics also can impact hormonal health. And so what we saw here was she was still dealing with some fatigue, some bloating, and still a few hormone symptoms. Not bad. She was really happy with where she was with her hormone symptoms. But when we did her gut zoomer, what we found is, there are a few things that we found, but we found short chain fatty acids were low. If we support short chain fatty acid production, that in and of itself can be a game changer for people. So short chain fatty acids are protectors of the gut lining. They are food for the microbiome, but then the microbiome, certain microbes in the microbiome produce short chain fatty acids. Hers were really low. The thing is, though, and you start to go, why is it so low? Why was she having some of these inflammatory markers that she had elevated? Why did she have some leaky gut going on, right? And so, again, going back to her history, she had been struggling with some of this stuff from childhood. And you're like, why is this going on? And so her gut immune system, right? We have this enteric immune system that was also super low. It's like it was tired out. We found a pathogenic organism. And so then you're like, okay, is this something that is acute, like it just happened, or is it chronic? And as you start to build out all of the markers and putting them together and having an understanding of what they all mean together as all of the pieces of the puzzle, we don't know when this bacteria started to take hold, but it's more of a chronic situation. What we often see when it comes to the enteric immune system is that it will get upregulated when it's angry, like it's just mad, it's upregulated, and then it gets tired. It's like, all right, I'm out. And so it goes low. And that's what we see, is it went really low on her. And so another thing is what we found is she has elevated beta-glucuronidase. Beta-glucuronidase is what helps, it plays a role in estrogen clearance. And so going back to her trying to manage her hormone symptoms, if we don't also look to understand what's going on in the GI that is pushing hormone symptoms, like this beta-glucuronidase, and not eliminating estrogen properly, and then estrogen goes up, and then symptoms go up, and so we have to, we have to layer in these pieces, because now we know, in order for her to continue moving forward with good hormonal health, that we need to address this beta-glucuronidase number and address these microbes that are impacting the beta-glucuronidase. So we also found that there was a leaky gut. Now, I think a lot of this, again, is due to this pathogenic bacteria, it's a pathogenic bacteria that was creating such an issue for her, right? So it's also, if she has leaky gut, inflammation, hormonal dysfunction, she's also going to have nutrient deficiencies, right? And so then they all play off of each other. So these nutrient deficiencies are, if the body uses nutrients to work, which means if it's working harder than it should, it's going to use more nutrients. And so we want to ensure, whether it's through food, through supplementation, oftentimes in a situation like this, it's certainly going to be both. We have to bring in supplements that are going to help to support all of the processes that are going on in order to deal with the inflammation, deal with the lack of short chain fatty acids, deal with the dysfunction of the microbiome, the lack of diversity of the microbiome. The list goes on, right? And so then we layer in her genetics. So she has a couple of genetics that increase fat storage under stress or high saturated fat intake, right? So if you're a follower of functional nutrition, functional medicine, you'll hear us say constantly that saturated fat is not bad if it's coming from a healthy source, right? That's a big if. So if you're going, so I'm going to take a cow, for example, right? You go and you eat an animal that is 100% grass-fed. It's a good, healthy animal. It's going to have a good, healthy, essential fatty acid, saturated fatty acid profile, right? The omega-3s are going to be balanced with the omega-6s. The animal's going to be healthy. It's not going to be pumped full of junk. It's not going to be eating foods that are inflammatory that it's not supposed to eat. Cows don't eat grains. They're not supposed to eat grains. They're not supposed to eat junk. They're supposed to eat grass. And so with that, if we're eating that animal, then that saturated fat is going to be, for the most part, it's going to be healthier for people, right? But then if we're eating the conventional animal that is full of, it's an imbalance of omega-6s and omega-3s, which is going to create some unhealthy, problematic saturated fats, then that's going to be a problem for her. Now, understanding our genetics, and so I'm one of these people as well, understanding our genetics helps us to understand, even though saturated fat can be healthy for most people, some of us have genetics that predisposes to the inability to manage saturated fat well. Doesn't mean it should be out of the diet, right? But it is a part of understanding who we are and what our potential is in managing things like saturated fat so we can mitigate symptoms and issues and conditions moving forward. So it's really, really cool stuff. And so again, so hers was saturated fat, as well as increased fat storage under stress. So if we have high cortisol, the body's going to sit there, it's going to hold on to fat. Now, she doesn't need to lose a bunch of weight, so this is a good thing for her. But it's good to understand your genetics, so you know, okay, saturated fat, let's keep it moderated, right? And then stress, let's definitely keep that moderated, because stress is inflammatory. And so she has another variant, or SNP. So SNP is single nucleotide polymorphism, right? So these are all epigenetics. So this one slows the clearance of estrogen and stress chemicals. So now we can take this, it's so fun, we can take this and we can see that she already genetically has the potential for slow clearance of estrogen. And then now she has this GI issue where she's got elevated beta-glucuronidase that's even further slowing down her estrogen clearance, right? You start to see why people have these hormone symptoms. You can't figure out why until you start layering in the data. And then we go back to stress again, right? So she has slower clearance of her stress chemicals, right? So it's her catecholamines and her cortisol and that kind of thing. And so having that, again, the understanding and layering that in, okay, if we are looking at lifestyle, let's find those things that we can do for this person that is going to help mitigate stress, right? As an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a person living in, the world that we're living in, there's going to be stress. It's just part of it. But what can we do, right? So of course I'm always going to push prayer. I'm going to push Bible study. I'm going to push talking to God. But if it's just being still, if it's being in yourself, if it's letting God talk to you, if it's going for a walk, if it's grounding, if it's taking a long bath with Epsom salts, name it, whatever it is that works for you to bring that nervous system into parasympathetic versus sympathetic, right? Which is parasympathetic's rest and digest, it's your calm, and then sympathetic is your we gotta go, everything's stressed, everything's crazy. So then this is also fun. There are some iron and methylation SNPs, and so this means higher nutrient demands in stressed and inflammatory states. So when we can see that someone has these SNPs that can push the inability, or the iron, sorry, I'm not speaking well, SNPs that don't allow for iron absorption properly, and when we were talking about this, her labs came back and her iron was low. So she is supplementing with iron, and she feels better. But when we are struggling through labs and trying to understand labs and why we don't feel well, it's really helpful to know that if you have certain SNPs that are going to perpetuate the inability to use iron from your diet, it helps to know, okay, I just need to supplement. There's something more that I've got to do, or I've got to eat more of this, whatever it takes to build your iron. I think most people in a situation like this you just need to supplement. Lack of iron is going to slow you down. It's going to make you tired, right? We got to have iron. And then methylation. So there are a number of methylation SNPs. Methylation plays a role in genetic expression. Methylation plays a role in, this is something actually I talked a lot about. If you have been following, I just did a talk for a hair summit, right? So it's this woman, Cyril Vasquez. She's awesome. Her focus is working with people with hair loss. And so she just did this big summit with 30 plus speakers. Really, really cool that she did this. And she did it for her people, right? She's doing this to help people who are struggling with hair loss, which is, it's all over the place, right? And so, and there's so many reasons. I had someone ask me about this, but hair loss can be this multifactorial situation where you're like, is it genetics? Is it my diet? Is it the lifestyle? Is it, is it, a cancer diagnosis and cancer treatment? Is it, the list can go on, and it can be all of these things, right? I think I said nutrient deficiencies. If I didn't, that's certainly one of them. I had someone say she lost her hair because she was not eating enough, so she wasn't getting enough nutrition. So hair's like the last thing, hair and, getting pregnant. Those are the things the body's like, yep, don't need those. If I'm in a stress disease state, these are the things that I'm worried least about. And so, anyway, what I was talking to her about, Surreal about, is that for me, I know my methylation's low when I start losing my hair right here. So I was like, okay, I need to be better supportive of my own methylation because my hair is starting to fall out. And so I go through these cycles because I believe in pulsing. Sorry, it's like my word just went away. But in pulsing our nutrients, right? We don't need to just supplement all the time, right? I think pulsing nutrients is a good thing, depending on where we are in our therapies and that kind of thing. But if I get a little bit of lackadaisical and it takes, if it's a year or whatever that I'm not taking my B vitamins, and it's not just B vitamins, it's other things as well, then I will notice that these hairs will start to fall out. And so now they're these kind of crazy in-betweeny sort of links, and they're just kind of awful, but at least they're growing back. That makes me happy. But it's these signs that I wouldn't have known had I not been paying attention to what's happening in my body and running the labs and then doing the nutrition and watching what happens, right? And this has been over years that this has been going on, but this is probably it's the second or third time that I noticed the hair. I'm like, oh, okay, time to get back on for me, it's the Apex product, Super Methyl SP. Hands down my favorite. It's a great product, and my hair always grows back with it. So anyway, so methylation is super important, right? There's a lab marker called homocysteine. You've probably heard me talk about it before. Homocysteine is often tested by a cardiologist. Why it's not tested by every doctor, by a general practitioner, I have no idea, but it should be. So if you've not had your homocysteine tested, test it, because I see it elevated all the time. All the time. I had someone come back to me, she was young, she was in her 20s, and she came back to me and her doctor said, no, I'm not going to test homocysteine because you're too young. BS. It's incorrect. And her homocysteine ended up being elevated, right? And so it is a cardiovascular inflammatory marker, but it's also a cognitive inflammatory marker. Also, the lab ranges are super broad, right? They're really big. So I think that the lab ranges, it depends on the lab, but it's like the upper range is 13 to 15, something like that. What Dr. Dale Bredesen says, who is the guy who's reversing Alzheimer's, is anything over 11 is 100% chance of cognitive decline. So we want to pay attention to those numbers, right? Mine started creeping up a little bit. Mine's been pretty good, even though, so remember, there are multiple methylation markers, right? And so for me, my homocysteine was good, but I had other methylating issues or methylation issues. But knowing though, I just recently did my labs, knowing though over the last few months that my methylation was low, and I've just started supporting it again. Well, I've been supporting probably for the last 4 or 5 months. But my homocysteine started to creep up a little bit. So we always want to make sure if we have these methylation SNPs that we're watching our B vitamins, we're watching our homocysteine, we're watching these different markers that help us to manage methylation. Methylation is also a part of detox. So if our methylation is low, we're not getting the nutrients we need to manage it. And so really that's what, in most cases, things like homocysteine or undermethylation, it's just a nutrient deficiency. It can, though, be oxidative stress. It also, homocysteine, I didn't know this until recently, but elevated homocysteine can be due to not enough creatine. So we can have certain variants that don't produce, creatine should be produced in the body, but sometimes it's not. And so we can look at these SNPs and see if there is potentially an issue with creatine production. We can supplement creatine, and sometimes people who are struggling with chronic pain, don't know what the pain is, just this chronic global pain. If we supplement with creatine, that pain will go away, right? So these cool little clinical pearls are really fun as we try to dig in and understand and figure out what's going on with a body and with the symptoms and the signals that it's trying to give us. Okay, so let's move on. So for this client in particular, there are a couple of things that we wanted to make sure that we do. We want to make sure that we're supplementing with the things that are going to benefit her, both her GI, as well as her genetics, as well as her hormones. All of these things are kind of going together, right? And so we need to really focus on men and women protein. We've got to have protein. But here's what's super cool. So what we're told is, and what I tell people, is we need probably 1 to 1.2 grams of protein a day per pound, or per ideal body weight, right? So if my ideal body weight is 120 pounds, I'm looking at somewhere around 120 grams of protein a day. It's a lot of food for me to eat. So I actually I will bring in a good protein powder. My favorite is called Perfect Aminos. I love Perfect Aminos because it's 100% absorbable. So I know I'm getting the aminos are already broken down. I know that I'm getting them, and it's building up my protein, right? And so as we're moving through perimenopause and menopause, our protein needs go up. Here's what's cool though too. A good, healthy, robust microbiome is also going to produce amino acids. So if we're supporting our microbiome and we're giving it the fibers that it needs, and we're giving it the short chain fatty acids, or allowing it to produce its own short chain fatty acids, it's nice and it's robust and it's healthy, it's protective, it's producing nutrients, it'll produce B12, and it will also produce amino acids. So going back to the importance of making sure that we're giving the microbiome what it needs in order to allow us to thrive. It's a partnership, right? We're working together to be our best. And so we wanted to increase our protein. These things support detox pathways, gut integrity, neurotransmitter balance, and metabolic stability, right? So it's really key to get good quality, healthy protein. So then we're looking at fats. We want to get healthy fats, right? So healthy fats are going to support the brain function. It's going to support cellular integrity. So we want to have the good, healthy omega-3s. Omega-6s are important too, but the right kinds of omega-6s. So staying away from the canola oils and the vegetable oils and these trans fats and those things, those are going to create more inflammation and more problems. But we want to have a healthy balance of omega-3s and good, healthy omega-6s, because we have to have the ability for the inflammatory process to happen when necessary, but the anti-inflammatory process to come in and manage the inflammation, right, and bring it down. So super important, especially in acute situations. You think about cutting yourself, you have to have that inflammation come in order to heal, but you've got to be able to have the anti-inflammatory effects or cascade as well, right? Let's see, what time is it? So let's do this real quick. Let's do a quick shout out to our sponsor, Susan Drake of Mountain Medical Concepts. You can see her, at least some of you can, or most of you probably can. She has a number of different products and services that support clinicians and practitioners. One of those things that I have up here for those of you who can see it on the video, Pnoe. This is a V2O max and metabolic analysis for healthcare. So it's a big piece of, or it's a fairly big piece of equipment. But it's for practitioners to help us understand our metabolic capacity, right? This is super cool stuff. And so as it says here, it's the 360-degree view of the human body. So we're looking at the brain and the blood and the saliva and the urine and the stool, and we're putting all of these things together in order to understand where we are and where we can be better. That's the key, right? We want to know that we're the best we can be, but we also want to know where we can improve. I always want to know where we can improve. You know, I did a big lab panel myself, I think 2 months ago, and then I made some changes and I just did another panel, right? So how cool is it just to be able to watch the body to adjust and to change based on what we're doing in our everyday life. It's fascinating stuff. It's so cool. And so this is how Pnoe can help us too. So we can understand this, our metabolism, what's impacting us, and how we can be better. So cool stuff. One of my friends, Dr. Ben Bush, regenerative medicine doc here in town, has this system. So go see him because he's amazing. He's super awesome at what he does. When things are out of my purview, right, out of my capacity as a functional nutritionist, they go see Dr. Bush. He's amazing at what he does. So Pnoe is awesome. He's got Pnoe, and then he's just great at regenerative medicine, right? This is the cool stuff. Then my own shout out, you know, a lot of what we're talking about here is the stuff that I do every day. And so I do with myself. These are the things that I do with myself all the time. I'm always growing, I'm always learning, I'm always digging into my own health. And so what I've done with myself over the last, I don't know if it's been 5 or 6 years now, is I've been gathering and collecting data and putting all these data points together so I can be my best and be my optimal. And so it has taught me a lot, but it's allowed me to put it into essentially a program where I can do it much more quickly for my clients, which makes it much more accessible financially. So that's really what the Precision Wellness Blueprint is all about. It really is this precision care based on each person. And so, and we can layer in information, so you can go deeper and deeper and deeper as you want and decide to go deeper, right? So we can have it, we start out, it's really deep anyway, right? Or pretty deep. So we have a couple of different body types that we're putting in. We're putting in, you know, the goals and the needs and the foods that you love and the foods that you hate, and, you know, what your lifestyle is like, and, you know, all of these different parameters, and we put them together. And if there are labs that you have currently, we can take those in as well and include those, and then it creates a report. And so then you decide, okay, yes, I want to spend more time with Nikki, or the report's enough. Then it can be, okay, now I want to dig deeper. I want to do this lab, and I want to do my genetics. And so we can take it and we build on it throughout time, depending on your financial abilities, right? Depending on your curiosity, depending on your needs and your goals. Your body's going to change. It's going to be super dynamic. But there are things that we can learn that you can take with you for a lifetime that we can just put in this report. You're like, okay, I got this, I got my report, and now I can take it and I can run with it. And that's awesome. Because that's really what I want, right? I want to make this stuff super accessible for people to be able to take it and be their best. It's really the heart of all of this. But then, of course, I'm here to dig in, and we can do all of that as well, which is, sort of the nerd part of me, because that's what I like to do. But anyway, you can text Blueprint to the number on here. It's the 720-864, I don't have it memorized, 1699. So you can text Blueprint to that if you want to check it out. I'm doing it right now. It's been a couple of weeks now, but we've been doing this for $47. It's really worth, I spent a couple of hours on it, quite honestly. And so it's really worth, I say $297. It's probably worth more than that. It's fine. Like I said, I'm wanting people to experience it, to see it. I've got some reviews on it so far, and to have some fun with it. And so check it out, and let me know if it's something that you're interested in, because it's super fun. I think it's super fun, super cool stuff. So, okay, let's get back to my client. Another thing that I really wanted to focus on with her, and I'm focusing more and more on with pretty much everybody, right? Again, I keep repeating it, but it's the microbiome. How can we bring in these different fibers that are going to support the microbiome and allow us, yes, we're going to have to kill off this kind of nasty bacteria that she has, but we have to at the same time build. So the body can also help to kill it off, right? And so that's really, really important here. And so the things that we want, yes, fruits and vegetables, super important. The fruits have these, fruits and vegetables is the bright colors, right? It's the purples and the reds and the oranges and, the greens, all of them. That's why they say eat the rainbow. It really is true. It's therapeutic. These phytonutrients also, on top of fibers, they're not fibers, but these phytonutrients feed our bacteria. They don't even feed us. How cool is that? It's not for us, so there are antioxidants in the foods that are important for us, but the phytonutrients feed the microbiome so they can do their job to support us. Really amazing stuff. So other things to think about. I have this handout. I probably should just make it as a little freebie giveaway. I think that would probably be smart, but I have a handout that I give to people a lot, and it's all of these different types of therapeutic fibers. And so they're from foods, but we can also get them in powder and supplement form. So one of the things that I've been doing and having more of my clients do is getting the ones that are kind of neutral. So there are some that can push bloating and discomfort depending on the situation. So we don't want to do that. But, and so we work with the person and where they are and bring in the right fibers for supporting that person. But we can get a couple of these, there's like acacia and inulin. I take those and I put them in my coffee in the morning. They dissolve. You don't know they're there. They don't taste like anything. You put in a tablespoon of each type of fiber, not all together. You can, but it's 6 grams of fiber in a tablespoon. So as I'm going throughout my day and I'm eating my fruits and my vegetables and I'm adding in additional fibers, I'm getting 30, 40, 50 grams of fiber a day. That's amazing. And it wasn't the way that it was at the beginning of the year and probably any time prior to that point. It's hard to eat a lot of food, right? We know that. And so it's not always about supplementing, but I am in a place where it's been protein and building my microbiome with the different types of fibers and bacteria. And so once I get beyond this sort of therapeutic point, then I can start to rely more on food and that kind of thing. But I wanted to super build. I wanted to see what I could do to really build all of the diversity in my microbiome. And so that's what I also want to do with my clients and patients. And so with her, we are bringing in specifically the acacia because it's easier on the GI. But there will be others as her body permits that we'll start to bring in as well, right? And then we'll bring in different types of spore-forming bacteria. And the great thing about the gut zoomer is it tells us what are the microbes that are needed to help her to balance, right? So that's super cool because none of the other labs do that, at least as far as I know, that I've seen. There are a lot of great ones out there, but this is the only one, the gut serum is the only one that says, okay, these are the bugs that are going to help to support your imbalances. And so we can bring those in specifically and then support those, support the specific bugs with the specific fiber that those bugs need. Amazing stuff. All right, so other things that we can think about for certain people, and understanding the labs and the lifestyle and where we are in life, all of that stuff, is do we fast? Do we carb cycle? Do we eat higher carbs? Do we eat lower carbs? Do we intermittent fast, right? And so, you know, the different places we are in life, the different, if we're male or female, if we are, you know, super stressed or not, these are all going to impact whether we should do any of these types of, you know, sort of diet, I hate the word diet, modifications, right? And so for her specifically, we will do some carb cycling. We will do some carb cycling around training days. So the more training, the heavier training, we'll do higher carbs. The lower training days, we do higher fat and lower carbs, right? For some people, it's more about higher carbs during certain times of your cycle for women, right? Versus higher fat during certain times of your cycle to support that cycle. For some people, it can be, this is not, you know, a macro, but it's, you know, we can do some seed cycling to help to manage cycles. So that can sometimes be something that we throw in, right? So it's great when we can do things with food to manage the body. A lot of times we do, or if not, yeah, lots of times the supplements are there therapeutically, and we just have to do it. It's just sort of the way that it is. But managing with the way that the rhythms of our body and the rhythms of the seasons can be really beneficial for most people. So we are going to do a pretty specific protocol. So we're going to help to eliminate this little bacteria, but at the same time we're going to support the gut, right? So you know, things like glutamine, zinc, carnosine, those are super important for the GI. But you've got to keep in mind, for some people, glutamine is not going to work. If they have these variants that make them sensitive to glutamine, then we got to think of something else, right? And so that's why the genetics comes in, right? So we got all of these things we got to think about. We want to support her beta-glucuronidase, so things like calcium D-glucarate. You know, that's a great way of supporting beta-glucuronidase and estrogen metabolism. So DIM is another good one. So cruciferous vegetables. DIM is a component in cruciferous vegetables. So that's the therapeutic part of cruciferous vegetables, or a part of them. But just eating your cruciferous vegetables that's a great way of getting started. But some people, we've got to be therapeutic, right? So we'll definitely be bringing in some butyrate, without a doubt. We've got to really focus in on her short chain fatty acids to help build her microbiome, and then some basic nutrient supplementations, that kind of thing. So let's see, other things that we're going to do is, we talked a little bit about this already, but you know, it's the prayer, the meditation, it's the, you know, making sure you're getting sleep and going to sleep at a decent hour and getting that 8 hours of sleep at least, right? So it's that like 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep that you really want to get to make sure that you're repairing and make sure you're getting into that deep sleep. The prayer, the grounding, the walking on the grass, the things that are going to be supportive of the nervous system and that parasympathetic, right? And then one of the variants, we want to make sure that, you know, there's consistent movement and resistance training, right? So we can look at our genes, we can understand what do we do that's supportive of movement and of exercise. What are the best exercises for us? So we want to get in some good resistance training. We want for her to go for daily walks, right? That kind of thing. And then meals, grazing. You know, I don't really know that grazing is great for anyone. unless you are one of those people, you're like a type, a high level athlete where you just need to eat regularly for the calorie intake. But really for so many people, especially when we're struggling with GI stuff, we want to have that period of emptiness. We want to allow the motility of the GI to work out the junk, right? And so we have detoxification, and we have our gallbladder, all these things dump into the intestines in order to be eliminated. We've got to have that movement so everything's moving through. And so that's also vagal tone. So supporting the vagus nerve, which is also, it's going to be supported through making sure that we are in our rest and digest, our parasympathetic, right? That's vagal nerve support. And so that is going to help the motility of the GI and moving things out, including these bugs that aren't supposed to be there, right? So as we're breaking them down, breaking down biofilms, getting rid of these bugs, we want all of those things to be eliminated, which is why we always start with opening up drainage pathways first, right? So that's where we are with her right now, is we're going to open up drainage pathways, so which is your lymphatic system, detox, kidneys, all of those things. Make sure that they are moving and getting rid of stuff. So as we start to move through this process, we know that everything's going to be eliminated as it should be. And sorry, I was reading one of the people who were watching. Got totally distracted. Like, what does that say? Anyway, let's see. So beyond that, I talked about grazing, chewing thoroughly. Let's not eat fast. I have a habit of that sometimes. Let's slow down. This also, the slowing down of the chewing and the eating, and not eating in front of your computer and not eating in front of the TV, but being slow. This also brings you into a parasympathetic tone, which is supportive of the vagus nerve and supportive of the GI and supportive of the brain and supportive of all of the things, right? So being calm as often as possible is the stuff that matters most, right? Reducing stress is key to everything that we do. And then the cool things that I love are the detox baths, the Epsom salt baths, sauna. If you can get into a good full spectrum infrared sauna as often as possible, it's one of the best things that you can do. It's great. Castor oil packs are awesome. Those are all really, really great for helping to move through, being supportive of your genes, being supportive of detox, being supportive of the microbiome, the list goes on. So, let's see, is there anything else? I think what I haven't hit on, what I think is really important to hit on here is, I talk a lot about genetics, but what I'm really addressing is the epigenome. The epigenome is what manages expression of our genes. And so if we've not talked about this in the past, I mean, I've talked about it, but if you've not heard me talk about it in the past, the epigenome is our potential, right? So we may have the potential for autoimmune disease. We may have the potential for diabetes and cardiovascular disease. I have all of those in my family. And I'm testing myself all the time to make sure that I'm on track. But just because the potential is there, I have the decision-making ability to determine what I'm going to do with my life, with my food, with my movement, with my thoughts, with my stress levels, to manage my epigenome so certain genes express or don't express, right? Both can be good and both can be bad, right? We want to manage the expression in the way that is beneficial for us, right? So I would prefer not to have my autoimmune, and I know I have them because I've seen them, but my autoimmune SNPs to express. That's not what I want. So I do the things so I know that that's at least the best of my ability, right? Nothing's 100%, but to ensure as best I can that those genes don't express. Things like trauma, it happens. That's not something, in most cases that I'm able to manage if I have a traumatic experience, right? And that can also push autoimmune disease. So going back to nothing is 100%, but it is a part of lifestyle, right? So it is part of us. And so we then, if you are someone who's dealt with traumatic experiences and then had something expressed like an autoimmune condition or GI issues or whatever the case may be, you still have the ability to back that up, right? And to help to support it, right? So don't ever think that you don't have that ability. And so the genetics thing, you know, genetics are not our fate. Cardiovascular disease is not my fate. Diabetes is not my fate. It's all over my family, but it is not my fate. And I will make sure of that. I will also tell you that in my genetics, Alzheimer's has the potential of playing a really big role in my life. And so I manage all the things that I need to manage, at least in most part, those things that are going to help me to ensure that I don't move down that road, right? So having that information, you know, information is power. Information is key. So we want to have that information so we know what we can do for today, for tomorrow, for 5, 10, 20, 50 years down the road. But what's even better is for those of you who are working on growing your families, this is the stuff that you pass on for generations. When SNPs turn on, they can be passed on for generations, 7 generations. So some people say more, some people say yes or less. But 7 generations. So this is a big, big deal. So if you are working on growing your family, which is amazing and beautiful, you as a couple want to be as healthy as you can, because you can push the positive and the negative, right? So you can push your health onto generations. We have the ability of creating a healthy future. But we want to make sure that we're doing that, right, by the decisions that we make. This is the beautiful thing about epigenetics, right? This is God's gift of free will. This is me making the decisions that I need to make for myself that I think are best for me, right? And I do that based on knowledge. I do it based on information and education. And so that's why I do what I do. And that's why I go to people who know more than I do, right? So I help people move through these processes, but I also have people who help me, because there's a lot that I don't know, but I'm learning more every day as often as I can. That's my goal, is to just always continue learning, because the more I know, the more I can help myself and all the people around me and the clients who come to see me. So, yeah, it's cool stuff. So much fun. So I think, you know, going, oh gosh, time flies, right? Don't chase symptoms. Understand truly that it's the body trying to give you information and help you to join in the partnership to help you get to the place that you want to be, whatever that looks like. If there's a condition you're struggling with, or you just want to look better, feel better, do more, right? That's me. There's so much more that I want to do. And so, you know, we have the ability to take all of this, layer it in, and get you what it is that you need. So that was not very great, but it is what it is. So anyway, I hope that this was helpful. I think it can be super eye-opening when you start to see the different pieces come together and what we can do to manage and to be better, right? So let me know if there's anything that I can do. If you have questions for me, feel free to reach out. Would really love for you to check out your Precision Wellness Blueprint. It's been sort of this labor of love that I didn't know was even happening. I didn't know it until I was like, holy smokes, this is something that can be really cool for just about anyone. So would love for you to check that out. Let me know if you have questions. Pass it on to people who might want to check it out. Like I said, it's $47. it's pretty cheap to get some goodness out there and see if we can help you start to move forward. And if you want to dig deeper, then of course we can do that as well. But that's what I'm here for. As always, go to tastelifenutrition.com. You can find all of my information, on the website. Then of course, it's Taste Life Nutrition on everywhere else, all of the socials. Make sure you reach out or look into Mountain Medical Concepts. Susan is amazing. She is only for practitioners, but if you're looking for specific things like the VO2 max, peptides, exosomes, food sensitivity testing, we're going to have her on the show here before long actually talking about her food sensitivity test, which is kind of cool. So look her up if you're a practitioner and want some really good quality products. Look up Dr. Ben Bush if you're looking for the VO2 max, or any kind of regenerative medicine. He is a great friend, great collaborator, and that's what I got. So let me know what you need. We'll see you back here 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live as always on the amazing KUHSdenver.com. And will be the podcast as we upload it next week. So if you want to just listen to it, then that's great too. Pass it on to the people you know and love. And we'll see you next week. Bye, y'all.